Welcome back. I'm here today with Richard King. Rick was the International Rotary President 2001, 2002. Rick, welcome to today's show.
Thank you. Nice to be back with you, Alan.
So, Rick, over the course of years, you developed, you have an interesting history. Let's just go through this. You once on a Vegas entertainer?
Yes, I sang 3 shows a night at the Desert Inn. Rocky Senes was my agent. I was performing at Woodminster in the Oakland Hills, and Bonnie Raitt's father, John Raitt, had a manager named Cecil Rourke. And Cecil came to see me do The Music Man. And he said, "How would you like to sing in Las Vegas?" Well, in those days, Frank Sinatra owned the town. It was very exciting for a young performer to be invited to sing in Las Vegas. And I thought this would be just great. What I didn't realize is that I would be singing 3 shows a night, and for 4 weeks at a time, I flew daily from the Oakland airport to Las Vegas, to McCarran Field, went to my room, had a corned beef sandwich for dinner. At 11 o'clock at night, the master of ceremonies would bring me out. Here he is from San Francisco, the baritone barrister, better known as the singing sewer. That was my warm and fuzzy introduction to singing. And I'd sing at 11 o'clock at night, and then at 1 in the morning, and then at 4 in the morning. At 5 in the morning, I'd be done, go to my room, have another corned beef sandwich for breakfast. In those days, Sherry, I wasn't married to my wife, so I didn't have anybody telling me how to eat right. And I'd have a Pepsi-Cola and a corned beef sandwich for breakfast, go to my room, sleep for 3 or 4 hours. Then I'd get on a plane, and at 12 o'clock, I'd be in my office suing. And I was suing all day and singing all night, 4 weeks at a time. Those were heady days.
That's the pun, the singing sewer.
The singing sewer.
Playing on the fact that you were an attorney. So.
I enjoyed it. I met Sinatra and Jimmy Durante and a lot of the big stars in Hollywood. It was a great time to be there when the name stars entertained.
I understand. Did you Christmas carol with Bing Crosby?
Yes. Bing and I did a show for the United Way in San Francisco many years ago. And of course, he was the big star, and I was just invited to come along and add a little something to the show. And so it was very exciting for me. Subsequently, I was invited to his home for Christmas Eve dinner in Hillsborough, which is where he lived with his second family. And I was very excited about this too. And I was dating his nutritionist, Tammy Taylor. And we went to Christmas Eve, and Bing and his wife, Kathy, and their 3 children, young children, second family. The dinner was treated by Trader Vic's, and Trader Vic was there himself. I think there were more waiters from Trader Vic's than there were of us eating. And they were all in tuxedos behind this great table, which was a Christmas Eve dinner. Mary Frances, Bing's daughter, was very young at the time, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. She says, "Mr. King, do you know who lives next door to us?" I said, "No, I don't." She said, "A real millionaire," which is a tribute to Bing. He had kept his kids sheltered from the fact that he was a pretty wealthy man himself. And she said, "We're going to go caroling to his house." So Bing said, should we rehearse for Mr. King? So they stood there, Catherine, Bing, Mary Frances, and the 2 boys, and they rehearsed for me. And my date, Bing didn't have his toupee on. He was bald as an egg. Great guy, a wonderful human being. And then he said, "Let me rehearse for Mr. King." And he sang White Christmas a cappella. One of the most memorable nights I've ever had. Bing Crosby singing White Christmas a cappella to me in his home, without his hair on, in a blazer, rehearsing so they could go next door to the real millionaire and sing Christmas carols for him.
Yeah, few people have had such a wonderful experience.
Well, I've had a lot of them over the years. The night that I was to first meet Bing, I was invited to sing for Ronald Reagan when he was running for governor of California at Goodman Hall in Jack London Square. And I said to the man who invited me, it was a $1,000 plate dinner. And I said, "Well, I'd be honored to sing for Mr. Reagan, but I don't want to sit at the head table because I'm meeting Miss Bing Crosby tonight, and I've been invited to his home for dinner in Hillsborough. So I hope Ronald Reagan will understand." "Oh, I'm sure he will. We won't put you at the head table. because he and Bing are old friends. So I got to the Goodman Hall, and here's 1,000 people at a $1,000 plate dinner for Ronald and Nancy Reagan. Sure enough, there's my nameplate right at the head table, sitting next to Ronald Reagan. I think he was already the governor. He was running for re-election, as I recall. So I said to the governor, I said, Mr. Reagan, I hope you'll forgive me, but I have to leave. I know this is so rude. I have to leave right after I sing because I'm having dinner tonight with Mr. Bing Crosby. Well, of course, Ronald Reagan was very gracious, as he always was. Said, well, I've known Bing for years, and on and on and on. Give him my best. So I scooted out after I sang for Ronald Reagan. When I got to Bing's home in Hillsborough, Kathy Crosby greeted me in a house coat. Oh, Rick, Bing's gone to bed. He's going to Africa in the morning on a safari, a photo-taking safari, not a shooting safari. And he needed to go to bed early, and it's a little late, but he wants you to come back at another date. So I had a ham sandwich in the pantry with Alan Fisher, their famous English butler, and that's the night I was supposed to meet Bing Crosby, in a surrogating way.
How fun. I'm visiting here today with Rick King. He's the former international president, Rotary International, also was an entertainer down in Las Vegas. We've been visiting about his life. Well, we're gonna take a quick break, but after we come back, we want to visit on leadership, and we'll be right back after these messages.
I love fishing, with my family.
I think it would be easier to use a net.
It was so much fun.
The times when we are together, it makes it all the more worth it.
Having Dad teach them how to cast a fly rod, and
as long as we're doing stuff together, we're having fun.
Some people see a father and a son fishing together, while others see a succession plan. Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Rick King. He's the former International Rotary President, 1.2 million members from 2001 to 2002, and also did a stint as a Vegas entertainer and day job as an attorney. So, but I want to move in. Rick, few people have had the opportunity to see the things that you've seen in life, and you've had the ability to lead in many capacities. Rotary is a huge one, humanitarian causes and making differences in the world. Becoming a leader, is it something that is inherited within one's soul, or is it something that gets developed?
I believe it gets developed. I believe there are some people who are born with leadership characteristics, the ability to communicate, the ability to listen. But I believe for the most part, leadership is a developed trait. And I read an article in Fortune magazine a few years ago, said, wanted, mere corporate leaders, mere managers need not apply. And the article went on to point out the difference between leadership and management. And it pointed out that leadership is a visionary skill. It's an art that's developed, whereas management is run on computers these days. And is a thing that they pointed out was that every year we graduate thousands of MBA graduates at universities in this country. And every year businesses are managed into bankruptcy because there's been no leadership. Leadership, in my judgment, is the ability to influence people to a course of action. And it requires three characteristics. It requires a conviction, a knowledge that what you are doing is right, something deep within you that you really believe in what you're doing. Second, it requires a vision, an ability to see the potential for the organization or the business or the society that you are leading. And third, and this might be the most important of all, it requires commitment. I believe that more things are done by commitment, and people are motivated by a sense of commitment. And the commitment comes from the experiences that you've had. And my commitment comes from years and years and years of seeing humanitarian projects all over the world, and the value of leading people to make a difference in other people's lives, because always and inevitably, Alan, it changes the life of the giver more than it does the receiver.
Conviction. I've heard you tell this story before about when you were in the entertainment industry and you had an agent, and you one day approached to be the Marlboro Man.
I was a client of the Ann Brebner Agency in San Francisco at the time. Ann Brebner was a very famous talent agent, represented many Hollywood stars, personalities, when they made movies in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was doing television commercials and still commercials. And it was about the years I was singing in Las Vegas. One day, Ann Brebner called me up and said, "Come on over right away. There's some guys in suits here, and they want to talk to you about doing a television commercial that'll make you famous." Well, I had just become a Latter-day Saint, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I was teaching seminary in the early morning to high school students, and I was trying to motivate them to lead a good life, one of which was not smoking or drinking. So when I got to Ann Brebner's studio, they offered me a contract to be the new Marlboro Man. And I said, without even thinking about what it would do to my seminary students, I said, "Well, I don't smoke." "You don't have to smoke." "You don't have to smoke?" "No, we don't show you smoking. We show you on a horse out in the snow in Montana or someplace like that in the winter." And I said, "Well, I've never been on a horse. I don't know how to ride a horse." "That's not a problem. We'll prop you up, we'll put a Stetson on you, and you'll be the new Marlboro Man." And they offered me some good money to do this. And it was very exciting because I wanted to help out my parents, who had given a lot to me over the years. So I drove back across the San Francisco Bay Bridge, to my home in San Leandro, very, very excited about being the new Marlboro Man. And by the time I got to my house, I knew that I couldn't do it, because I knew that I couldn't justify advertising smoking to my high school seminary students when I was trying to teach them one thing. I couldn't act a different way. It was a tough one for me to turn down, but it was the one at the beginning of a lot of experiences that I've had over the years, where I've had to make a choice between who I really am, a conviction myself, who I am, what I believe, and what I do is one and the same, and not just what I believe and what I do as separate things. And it stood me in good stead over the years. I think it's paid off.
I'm visiting here today with Rick King, former International Rotary President, and is a legacy in the area of leadership. And Rick, I need to take a quick break, and I'll be right back after these messages with Richard King.
When I grow up, I want to work with very successful people.
I want to advise people so that they can pay less tax.
Hang out with my clients on the golf course.
Fishing.
And on their private yachts.
They will all be my friends too.
I want to work with the VCs who will fund the next Fortune 500 company.
When I grow up, I want to be just like my dad.
Money won't buy you happiness in life, but we can help take care of your financial affairs so you can focus on what's really important. Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Rick King, former International Rotary President, 2001-2002. Rick, we've been talking about leadership, and is there a memory that stands out all the years that you've been working with people or organizations throughout the world? Is there any story that you have of the most memorable time of working with someone?
Well, of course, I've been a leader in a lot of organizations, primarily in Rotary International over the years. And I believe the best definition of leadership I've ever come across is one that says a leader is someone who influences someone else to do something, a course of action, a vision of what the leader has in mind. So I wanted, when I was international president of Rotary, to develop the organization to a higher level in terms of its membership, in terms of its club activity, and its humanitarian work. We sent millions of dollars to Afghan refugees. We built 75,000 new members net around the world, 1,158 new Rotary clubs. But it was the humanitarian projects, the movement forward in our polio eradication campaign, that has motivated me to try to be a leader. Trying to get somebody to buy into what it is you want them to do requires listening to them and then trying to convince them with influence about getting excited about making it their idea as well as yours, because when it becomes their idea, then they buy in and they get the job done. When I was the governor of Rotary in this district, 40, 50 clubs, 30 years ago, I wanted the clubs to do certain things. I wanted them to expand the idea of Rotary as community and humanitarian service around the globe in a big way. Many of the club presidents resisted me initially because they were frightened. They were afraid to take it on. So I went to the president of the Hayward Rotary Club, Charlie Plummer, who was then the chief of police. Charlie Plummer was a macho man. He wore his pistol on his belt when he presided over the Rotary Club meetings. Nobody argued with him when he came to fighting. Great guy, and for many years was the sheriff of Alameda County. And you know Charlie, and I know Charlie. He was a Marine, he was a macho, and he was a man's man. And I said, Charlie, I want you to get people to contribute to the Rotary Foundation. And he said, they won't like that, Rick. They'll kick us both out of the town. And I said, I want you to ask them one-on-one. Would you do it for me? Put the blame on me. Lay it all on me. And I'll take the rap for it so that you can stay in town and I'll leave. Charlie called me up at the end of his term like a kid with a new red wagon. He'd gotten 29 new Paul Harris Fellows, which was $29,000 in contributions to the Rotary Foundation. First time the club had ever done anything like that. And he was very excited. At the district conference in San Jose, Charlie Plummer got up and gave a speech. And this is what he said. Rick, I would follow you anywhere because you made me better than I thought I was. Oh, I've got a house full of accolades. I've got a wonderful letter from Ronald Reagan on my service in the community. Leaders of heads of state have given me wonderful gifts, tributes, honorary doctorates, and on and on and on. But the possession I prize the most is a letter from Charlie Plummer, wherein he reiterated what he said that night. You made me better than I thought I was. And I thought to myself, that's what a leader does. A leader tries to make people better than they think they are and elevates them to a higher status and ability to get things done that they didn't believe was possible before. And I'm rather proud of that. I'm proud that a macho guy like Charlie Plummer thought I was a leader.
Who gets more out of leadership, the giver or the receiver?
Oh, gee, the giver always. I've received more time and time again. All the experiences that I've had over the years. I remember being in Orange County speaking to a Rotary Club, and I was greeted by a dear friend of mine who was in the floor covering business, and he was quite a leader in his own right. And he said, Rick, you always get more than you give. I said, tell me about it. Well, we went to the hospital today to bring home our first grandchild, who was born a week ago on a Sunday, and the doctors had told us you probably wouldn't survive. He didn't understand the illnesses and the problems, a lot of complications at birth. So a week later, 1 week after her birth, and 3 or 4 days before I arrived to give my speech, they went to the hospital to bring home their first grandchild. He'd been elevated to 50-50. And she said, we went into a hospital room, and this little baby, 7 or 8 pounds, was born, hooked up to a big machine with tubes and wires. And Carol and I put our arms around each other, and we wept, and we prayed, and we wanted to will our grandchild to life. And he said, I felt so helpless. And then all of a sudden, in the corner of the machine, keeping my grandchild alive, I got the shock of my life, because there was the rotary wheel. And underneath it, a little plaque, and it said, this machine was donated by my Rotary Club. And he said, my mind raced back, Rick, when the president of the club asked for contributions. A machine was needed by the children's wing of the hospital. $1 million. But I think we can do it. So he said, I wrote a check because, Rick, Rotary's always asking for a little of our money. And then I sold beer and hot dogs at the club fundraiser at the fair because, Rick, Rotary's always asking for a little of our time, a little of our money, and our little of our time. And I forgot all about it 3 years later until last Sunday, when that machine was keeping my first grandchild alive. And then he broke down and he cried. Successful businessman. And he cried. Didn't make any difference all of a sudden how big his car was, how big his house was, how much money he made. All that mattered was that that machine had kept his grandchild alive. And he said, Rick, how did we ever get into an organization that's always asking us to give? Because you can't give it away. Sooner or later, one way or another, always and inevitably, it comes back. And I believe it's always the giver, always the one who gives, that is enhanced and enriched more. We had a wonderful Rotarian by the name of Albert Schweitzer, and he said, Rotary produces the more truly human man, the more truly human woman. I believe that to be true. It's certainly been true in my own life and in my own case.
Rick, it's always a pleasure to have you on today's show, and that was a wonderful story. Rick King, International President of Rotary, and has been sharing his thoughts on leadership and also some of the memories that throughout the year. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Alan. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. We'll be right back after these messages.